Most people fear the silence of an empty room. They call it loneliness. But for those who lead, silence is the first requirement of power. Niccolò Machiavelli taught us that support is often a gilded cage. It makes you weak. It makes you dependent. It makes you predictable. When you stand alone, you have no one to betray you. You have no one to wait for. You are the architect, the builder, and the king of your own void. Today, we enter the halls of shadow to learn the coldest truth, how to succeed when the world offers you nothing but absence. Welcome back to Shadow Therapy. Session 2, the Machiavellian Autonomy. The biggest lie society ever whispered in your ears that you need a tribe to survive. Machiavelli looked into the hearts of men and found only shifting sand. They call it loyalty when things are easy. But the moment the first stone falls from your wall, watch how quickly their footsteps fade into the distance. Understand this. Every hand that helps you up today is a hand that can pull you down tomorrow. When you build your success on the foundation of others' promises, you aren't a king, you are a tenant in someone else's empire. And the rent for their support is always your freedom. Look at your limbs. Can you feel the invisible strings? Every favor you accepted out of weakness has become a cord, binding your will to the whims of the mediocre. To be supported is to be steered. To be helped is to be hollowed out until you are nothing but a puppet dancing for a crowd that doesn't even like the play. The mediocre stay in groups because they fear the cold of the summit. They want you to stay down there with them, sharing their warmth and their limitations. But the great work requires a different temperature. It requires the absolute freezing autonomy of the void. To seek support is to admit that you are not enough. It is a confession of incompetence that the world will eventually use against you. Machiavelli's prince knows that the only hand you can trust is the one at the end of your own arm. Solitude is not your enemy. It is your shield. Strength without cunning is nothing but a grand target for those who envy your light. Machiavelli warned us. The lion is a master of the open field. He can scatter the wolves with a single roar, but he is blind to the invisible snare hidden beneath the leaves. To survive the void of zero support, you must learn to split your soul in two. The lion is your boundary. It is the cold, unyielding no that echoes through the halls of your life. When you have no pack to protect you, your roar must be so absolute that no one dares to test the thickness of your skin. It is the raw display of autonomy the moment you decide that your time, your energy, and your spirit are not for sale, not for rent, and certainly not for the weak to consume. Pause, low exhale. But the fox is the master of the shadows you now inhabit. Cunning is the art of the soft touch. It is knowing how to smile at the very people you intend to bypass. While the world looks for a lion to fight, you move like the fox, quiet, unnoticed, and entirely self-contained. You do not demand a seat at their table. You build your own in the dark, and they only realize you've won when the feast is already over, when there is no one to hold the shield for you. Your mind must become the weapon and the fortress simultaneously. Use the lion's fury to guard your focus from the leeches of society, and use the fox's intellect to infiltrate the gates that others believe are locked. You are not alone. You are simply operating on a frequency that the mediocre cannot hear. And that silence is where your empire begins. Before you can rule the world with zero support, you must first become a dictator of your own internal landscape. Machiavelli's prince is not a man of impulse. He is a man of calculated architecture. Your mind is the only territory where you have absolute sovereignty. If you cannot control the borders of your thoughts, you have already lost the war before the first shadow falls. The first layer of your fortress is emotional detachment. To succeed alone, you must treat your emotions not as a compass, but as weather patterns. Rain will fall and storms will rage, but the stone of your resolve remains dry. When someone ignores you, mocks you, or leaves you observant, do not feel it. A prince does not bleed for those who are merely passing through his halls. Silence is your second wall. The mediocre desperate need to be understood, to explain themselves, to seek validation for their struggles. You must do the opposite. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night. And when you move, let your stroke be like a thunderbolt. The more you speak of your goals, the more power you give away to those who wish to see you fail. Build your sanctuary in the absence of praise. Most people are addicted to the applause of others. It is a drug that makes them obedient. By choosing zero support, you break the addiction. You become the only judge in the courtroom of your life. When the world offers you nothing, it accidentally grants you the greatest gift of all, the end of all expectations. Master the art of the internal monologue. When you are alone in the dark, the voices of your past will come to haunt you. They will whisper that you are too small, too broken, or that you were never meant for the crown. You must hunt these voices down like wolves in your garden. Replace their noise with the cold rhythmic logic of your ambition. If you do not narrate your own story, your enemies will do it for you. Strategic isolation is not a retreat. It is a laboratory. In the vacuum of zero support, you find out what you are truly made of. The steel is not forged in the warmth of a crowd. It is forged in the crushing pressure of the deep. Use this time to sharpen your skills, to study the maps of your industry, and to become so competent that your presence alone becomes an undeniable force of nature. Remember the Machiavellian rule. The prince must avoid being hated, but he must also avoid being too accessible. By success in solitude, you create an aura of mystery. People fear what they cannot understand, and they respect what they cannot control. Let them wonder how you stand so straight while the world is trying to bend you. Let your success be the only answer they ever receive. Your mind is now a fortress. The gates are locked from the inside. Now that you have mastered your internal world, you are ready to look outward and see who among your allies is actually a traitor in disguise. Let us identify the weights you must drop to truly fly. To build an empire, you must first clear the ruins. Machiavelli knew that a prince's greatest threat isn't the enemy at the gates, but the traitor at the table. To succeed alone, you must recognize when family and friends have become weights around your neck. Here are the signs it is time to cut the cord. Sign 1. They celebrate your failures more loudly than your victories. If their eyes dim when you rise, they aren't your support, they are your anchors. Sign 2. Constant manipulation through guilt. They use the past like a weapon to keep you from a future they cannot reach. Break the blade before it finds your heart. Sign 3. They drain your energy without contributing a drop to your reservoir. Parasites call themselves loved ones because it gives them free access to your soul. Sign 4. They speak of loyalty only when they need something from you. True Machiavellian autonomy requires you to see through the mask of their convenience. Sign 5. They fear your evolution. When you change, they feel abandoned. They don't want the best for you, they want the version of you they can control. Sign 6. Disloyalty in small things. He who is untrustworthy with a secret will be a traitor in the war. There are no small betrayals in the hall of power. Sign 7. They expect you to pay for their mistakes. Accountability is the price of adulthood, and those who avoid it will always look for a host. Sign 8. The silence of resentment. You can feel the weight of their unspoken anger every time you step toward the sun. That silence is the sound of a closing door. Machiavelli taught that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. In your private circle, it is better to be alone than surrounded by ghosts of your past who refuse to let you grow. Cut the ties, not out of anger, but out of necessity. Your fortress cannot stand if the foundations are rotten. Stoicism reminds us that we only control our internal state. If your peace is compromised by the presence of others, you have given them the keys to your kingdom. Take them back. The moment you stop seeking their approval is the moment you become truly untouchable. The void is not a lack of people, it is a lack of interference. Remember, zero support is better than false support. In the vacuum of their absence, you will finally hear the voice of your own intuition. That is the only guide a prince ever truly needs. Welcome the cold that is where your new self is for. The session is nearing its end, but your path is only beginning. Machiavelli did not write for the masses. He wrote for the individual who refused to be part of the herd. To succeed with zero support is to transform from a victim of circumstance into an architect of destiny. Look around the ruins of your old expectations. Every bridge you burned was a necessary fire to light your way forward. Do not mourn the ghosts of friends or the silence of family. They were merely players in a scene you have already outgrown. The prince stands alone because his vision is too vast for the mediocre to share. This is the shadow therapy you came for. It is the realization that your internal fortress is the only ground that doesn't shake. Trust your own intuition. Cultivate your own garden. Guard your own silence. The world will call you cold, but that coldness is simply the temperature of absolute clarity. If you found truth in these shadows, do not keep it for the ungrateful. Use it to sharpen your mind. Subscribe to this channel, not to follow a leader, but to join the ranks of those who lead themselves. Leave a comment below. What part of your support are you ready to burn today? Share this with the one soul you believe is ready for the truth, or keep it as your secret weapon. The choice, as always, is yours. Every prince must decide how much of the light he is willing to sacrifice for the power of the dark. Your evolution is no longer optional. We have only just scratched the surface of the shadow. Next time we go deeper, we will discuss Miyamoto Musashi and the art of training the mind to obey. Until then, stay in the silence. Stay in the power. This has been your shadow therapy. The doors are closing. The lights are fading. But in the dark, you finally see clearly. Do not be afraid of what you have become. Be afraid of who you were when you still needed them. Farewell, architect. We shall meet in the void.